On this episode of Athletic Training Chat, we have Dr. Becca Stearns, who is out at the Korey Stringer Institute. On this episode, we talk about the TUFSS program, which I was familiar with but didn't know the breadth and the depth of what they do, so we get into all of that. And then also how kind of really well timed and hopefully productive the next couple weeks to months will be out in California with new legislation being introduced to get licensure for athletic trainers out there. Korey Stringer Institute and the TUFSS program going out there to help aid in that through education and trying to make sure that these programs and initiatives are getting put in to help protect the safety of student athletes and athletes in general out there. So a lot of interesting things, great timing correlating on this. As we talked about at the end of the episode, this was recorded in late February, so right around March when we'll be of 2023 when this is all happening. As always, we are powered by Mueller Sports Medicine. Check them out for all your sports medicine needs. Their new Revive pneumatic compression product is fantastic and really affordable and competitive and really backed by science. We had a great conversation with Lawrence White on that, so please go back and check that out. But without further ado, please enjoy this episode. Welcome to this episode of Athletic Training Chat. We are on with Dr. Becca Stearns of the Korey Stringer Institute, and we are going to talk about the TUFSS project, or the Team Up for Sports Safety. I want to make sure I get that correct. A lot of things that they do, and we're going to talk about that, but really we're going to try and focus on this push in California to get state licensure, and I'm sure Becca will go into some of the reasons for that, as if you're on social media, especially around AT Twitter, there's definitely been some things over the past year or so that have highlighted the need for that. But before we get into all of those things, I just wanted to turn it over to you to kind of fill in your background, and then we'll jump into maybe kind of the first one as you're explaining everything of what exactly the TUFSS project is, and then we'll take it from there.
Sure. Sounds great. Yeah. And thank you so much for having me today. So, as you said, I'm Becca Stearns. I am the COO of the Korey Stringer Institute. I've actually been with the Korey Stringer Institute ever since we opened in 2010. And so my background is in athletic training. I did work at the secondary school level for a little while, and have also worked at many mass medical tent events as well. My day-to-day job, again, is at Korey Stringer Institute. And so I really work on the projects that drive our main mission and goals. And so our mission is to prevent sudden death in sport, enhance performance for the athlete, warfighter, and laborer. Right. So I know that because of our namesake and because of many of the populations that we work with, a lot of it can seem that we focus on sport, but we do encompass all those other areas that athletic trainers work and also experience similar catastrophic injuries that we see in sport too. So we were founded in 2010. I've been with KSF ever since then. And the TUFSS program is an initiative that I work a lot on. It encompasses a lot of the work that I do on a day-to-day basis. And it was formally started in 2018 is when we really started our first full year of visits. But I know we'll get into that in more detail. So I'll hold off on the rest of that for now.
So yeah, I guess really trying to go into that right off the bat is
Sure.
just exactly what is it, how did it get started, and what is the aim that it has on the to have a positive impact, in sports and the athletic training profession.
So as I said, and as you described, it's Team Up for Sport Safety, and it's termed that because really the impetus behind this project is that we wanted to propel policy adoption forward, specifically for those policies that have been proven to reduce catastrophic injury in sport. We are sponsored by the NATA and also the NFL. They've invested grant dollars to help ensure that we are able to do these state visits. And that's really how we approach this project, is going state to state and working with the stakeholders within each of those states to try to identify gaps in current enacted policy and regulations, and to try to close those gaps so that we can ensure that basic health and safety and best practices are in place to protect all athletes in regards to the potential risk for catastrophic injuries. And so, as I said, we started this in 2018. I would say truly, though, the work behind this was laid when we first had our position statement from the NATA. So in 2012 and 2013, a couple of position statements came out from the NATA related to preventing sudden death in sport. There was a global one, there was one specific for high school, secondary school athletes, and also a collegiate one. And that was really the first time that the best practices specific to these catastrophic injuries were really held under one document. And so it really compiled all of that and put it forth in best practices. And so from those best practices, we've moved forward to try to ensure, again, that those basic health and safety measures are available to the high school athletes. Of course, we have almost 8 million high school athletes in the United States. And generally, if you look and compare those athletes and the resources and what's available to them to the higher levels of sport in the NCAA and also the professional level, we know that they're under-resourced in comparison, right? But we don't believe that when it comes to potentially life-threatening issues, that you still shouldn't have those protections in place for athletes. So that's really where the initiative came from and kind of the focus of it. We really focus on the top 4 causes of sudden death in sport because 90% of the deaths that we do see originate from those 4 causes, being sudden cardiac arrest, exertional sickling, heat stroke, and head and neck injuries. So those 4 make up about 90% of the deaths that we see. And so, of course, we think that it's a really efficient use of our time to focus on those causes so that we can affect that 90%. And then we also focus on all of the, what I would say, supporting structure around that. So we talk about emergency action plans, because of course that would help enact all of the best practices around all 4 of those conditions. We talk about pre-participation exams, access to athletic training services, other coordination with other medical professionals. So all of those items come together to try to, again, close those gaps and ensure that athletes are getting the best protections possible.
Perfect. Thanks for that explanation. Just to kind of sum it all up, because I think, even for me, I was aware of everything kind of KSI was doing, but just within the specifics of this project, it's perfect. So thank you for that. Somewhat shifting, and we'll say this is, California and licensure, TUFSS, we were just kind of chatting before we hit record about that meeting coming up and everything around it. So can you just kind of maybe give a sum up of what you all are looking to do in California and help out? And obviously that's been a hot topic for a long time in the athletic training profession, and just what that looks like. And then we'll maybe have some specifics that you guys are looking to go and hopefully help address here in the near future.
Sure. So I should say we have been to 30 states to date. So we are officially through the halfway mark on the project.
Nice.
And as we open up 2023, and I think appropriately as we enter March for Athletic Training Month here, our first visit is going to be to California. And so we were in California last year. We are going back this year. California is really important for a lot of reasons. Certainly, as we're talking about now, we know that athletic training licensure doesn't exist in the state of California. So anyone can go to California and claim to be an athletic trainer and work as in the profession of athletic training in California. But California is also just massive in that it usually has the highest or second highest number of high school athletes within the state itself.
For sure.
So between California and Texas, there's just the largest number of high school athletes that we know of in any other state. So when we talk about health and safety in California, we're talking about a much greater percentage of the high school athletes and the protections that are afforded to them. So in California, this year is special as we head back because we're entering a new legislative session for the state of California. And if anyone was active on Twitter, you may have seen the exciting announcement is that there is a bill that's being put forth, and we have an author within the legislature for California athletic training licensure. So in terms of how we look at this and how this relates to the TUFSS project, I didn't mention licensure on that list of things I was talking about earlier, but as everyone knows here, there's 49 other states that have regulations in place for athletic trainers. So this is unique to California.
Right.
But we look at licensure in California as something that is really kind of a critical parallel and synergistic step that needs to be taken to really accomplish and have the impact that we're looking to have with the TUFSS program, right? So we're talking about health and safety measures in California. Certainly athletic training services is one of those. And a lot of the health and safety policies and procedures we talk about are enabled, enacted, or implemented by athletic trainers, right? So not having licensure really does limit the impact not only that the TUFSS projects can have, but also is a big priority for the athletic training profession in general, right?
Absolutely. And kind of looking at things that you've seen, with the barriers to licensure, is that something that you all have had, specific connection with or in communication with people out there to help assist with, and kind of what have been those historical barriers?
Yeah. Certainly we are located within Connecticut, so we don't have that on the boots on the ground perspective, but
Literally almost couldn't be further, huh?
right. Yeah. But we're hoping again that this project can help, because again of the focus and the goals of the TUFSS project, can help to also propel forward the momentum and the efforts being put forth through the California Athletic Training Association and the NATA as they are trying to, as they are introducing this bill for AT licensure in California and pushing that forward. So we just see these as very synergistic. So I think historically, the good news historically is that it's made its way to the governor's desk 3 times previously. So
Oh,
it's
wow. I
gotten
wasn't
passed by,
aware of that.
yeah,
Yeah.
so it's gotten passed by both sides, the Senate and the House 3 times, and it's made its way to the governor's desk, which is really that final signature that you need. And it was up right before COVID hit. And of course, when that happened, I think it got pushed off because of everything else that we were dealing with at that time. And so I'm optimistic. There's obviously no guarantees. There's a long path ahead of us, but I'm hopeful that the state that we're in at this point, we can continue that momentum and push it across the finish line this time. And we're just really trying to do everything we can to help support that and make it happen. Yeah.
So one of the questions I had, is there any kind of new or unique approaches to work around some of these barriers, which sounds like, again, just learning something about how it's been very, very close before, but maybe just not quite gotten there, is the focus from your standpoint and TUFSS and KSI of highlighting the educational purpose and then just really kind of telling that story of why it's so important and how, so many of these boxes, if you will, this is going to sound too simplistic, get checked by, really regulating this, and then kind of everything else can hopefully fall in line.
Yeah. So it's a great point. And I think, previously, I think the perception was that, athletic training licensure would mean that we would overstep our educational boundaries, right?
Sure.
It would go beyond what we are educated to do and how we're able to practice, right? And that it might overstep into some other professional bounds as well, who I think were worried about maybe positions or employment being taken from those professions, right? I think those are generally the biggest barriers that we've seen in the past in terms of the narrative that has come out. But what I think this conversation can have is a great opportunity for education about what truly licensure means for athletic training in any medical profession, really, right? All the other major medical professions in California are going to be regulated at some level. In 49 other states, we have regulation of athletic trainers. And I think one of the things we've seen recently is that when you don't have regulation for a profession, and specifically, obviously, it really matters when you're talking about medical professionals, anyone can claim to be qualified for that position. So not only do you risk violations when it comes to medical practices, right, or the health and safety of an athlete, you also risk ethical violations that then have no repercussions because you don't have regulation and you don't have the power to then take away the ability for that person to practice, right? So I really think when we talk about licensure for athletic trainers, we're really only talking to enhancing the health and safety for the athlete. It really benefits the athlete. And I think that's where the focus should go when we talk about regulating the profession of athletic trainers. So we've seen a lot of individuals claiming to be and working under the title of athletic trainer who do not have that certification or education. And there's either a breach of appropriate medical care for an athlete, or there's some misconduct that occurs that's unrelated to medical care. And the problem that we're faced when those scenarios happen is there's no ability to prohibit that person from going back and introducing themselves or injuring further athletes, right?
Mm.
Because we don't have regulation of that of our profession there. And so that's why I go back to the idea of it's really about protecting the athlete at the end of the day and making sure that we're regulating who has contact with that athlete and that they have the appropriate education and care to do that. There's nothing in the bill that would say that we would be working outside of our educational competencies, right? So clearly we have very clear regulations and requirements before you get your certification in terms of what you've been educated on, the competencies that are required. And so it clearly states within the bill here that we would work within those educational competencies.
Appreciate the insight on that. Just looking at a lot of things, we were talking again previously, the media push on around a lot of this, the meeting, the Tufts and, the collaboration with the NFL, the Rams, and obviously the California Athletic Trainers Association. And then again, just kind of even more background for that you had of being with KSI since the beginning, when everything started. Could you talk a little bit, of how you've connected and partnered with these large and seemingly influential and powerful um partners, for lack of a better way to describe it, but what that looks like, and even some different maybe takeaways, or if ATs are trying to look at different things within their state, to help with either pushing forward better practices, or with license laws, always practice acts kind of trying to change a little bit to continue to make sure that ATs are still practicing with their realm, but
Mm.
expanding that realm a little bit more to just an athletes. If you wouldn't mind kind of talking about that broadly. Sorry
Yeah.
for that really, really long question.
Yeah. So I'll try to concisely respond to that if I can. So
Yeah, I can
um,
also ask the other parts of it as you get going again. So
sure. Yeah. Okay. So first, I would say, as we launched into the Tufts program, the NFL and NATA were already partners with the Korey Stringer Institute.
sure.
So I think essentially they were involved at the very ground level when we first started this project, and they saw the initiative, they saw the goals and purpose of it, and they wanted to jump on board and be supportive of that. And the funding from the NATA and also the NFL is what allows us to go to the states. So when we go to a state, um, we are very targeted and specific in terms of the individuals we want to have in the room, because again, we're looking for individuals who have sway and influence and decision making power, and also we want the feedback from the individuals in the room who are going to be impacted by these policies as well. So we pull all of them into the room, and the funding that we've received from the NFL and NATA has allowed us to execute all of these meetings. So I would say that's really how we've gotten involved, and then certainly the natural connections and collaborations through the various entities that they have also been supportive. So our meeting in California is going to be in the LA area, and so being that the LA Rams are right there, and they are also very aware of the AT licensure within their own state and supportive of many of the other things that we are doing. They've been incredibly gracious in helping to support us in pulling this together as well.
For a lot of those kind of instances, obviously, I'm guessing you reach out, to the athletic training staff that works, with the Rams, and then it is it connections through there that help bring you to, more of the organization at large? Because
Mhm.
I'm guessing most athletic trainers that are supportive of this, but then getting the people, that you said that have that influence and that sway to also understand that. Is that generally how you've been able to put those together and get that increased buy-in?
Yeah, I do have to say that the states that we visit, and when we see a lot of momentum happening in a state, and when we see a lot of success occur, um, a large majority of the time, I'm not going to say it's the only, I can only credit the athletic trainers, but truly the people on the ground making things happen. A lot of the time, it's the athletic trainers that are driving it within the state, and so that's why, yes, it's our natural connectivity, right? I'm an athletic trainer. Most of our staff are athletic trainers. It's funded through the NATA, and so that's always our initial go-to. We always try to connect with the leadership within the states, for the Athletic Training Association, to help pull those people in. But then we work collaboratively. Of course, athletic trainers have all these great natural connections as well, just through their day-to-day work. So connections with the State High School Association and the advising sports medicine advisory committees, the physicians within the state, EMS, nurses, coaches, superintendents, athletic directors. If we're going a legislative route, then we do want to pull in those legislators as well. And maybe there's previous work that they've done. Pretty much every, I think every state has kind of a governmental affairs liaison, right? And that they can work with. And there's programs through the NATA that you can use to help with any legislative initiatives too. So those are all huge connections for us. And what we found is that this meeting has really just allowed those entities to come together under one mission and goal and discuss that on site with a very focused, targeted topics. And that's really what allows that progress to occur, right? We're trying to propel it forward faster. And
Hmm.
so when you have all those entities in a room and you have those really targeted conversations, I think that's what's made the program successful. And I have to credit the athletic trainers in the states. And so you really need like a few drivers, really
Sure.
passionate people in the room. And so, the state presidents or the directors and or the other people in the room that help, that take on those roles and leadership positions within their state. So I mean that is a credit to these volunteer positions that these athletic trainers have taken on and helped to propel this forward. It's really the work that they are doing that has really enabled us to be so successful.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Kind of tying into some more of that, you mentioned you guys have been to 30 states, over halfway there. I'm guessing some have gone better than others, just in terms of things. But have you found what is, in quotes, most effective in trying to work on these either legislative efforts or working with state athletic associations in terms of identifying things and making positive change, that you guys have, you kind of have a game plan slash playbook of it. I don't, but things that you've found that have been most effective in working with these groups.
Yeah, that's a great question because you outline the two main models that we see in terms of where policy adoption can occur, right?
Right.
And so when we talk about policy adoption, we're looking at a level that's beyond recommendation, right? We're looking at things that are required or mandated through the
Hmm.
state. And so we thought that that was a level of scrutiny that was the only way to ensure equal access to those health and safety policies for all athletes, right? So that's kind of the level that we were looking for. And so you typically see that either through the State High School Association route. They create policies for all other aspects of participation in sport programs for their state, right? So um, anything that relates to the officials on the field, to practices and games when they start, protect, all that stuff that goes into it. So that's usually a component of the State High School Association. And or you can go the route of legislation, right? And so what I'll say is every state is unique. They all come with their own
Sure.
resources. They all come with their own barriers. They all come with a different mix of interests and um, initiatives that they already have going on. So we really try to work with the state for what works best with them. And I think that's why this individualized approach has been successful in accomplishing that. So sometimes, there's something that that needs to go the legislative route based on either maybe financial or other factors that it incorporates, right? But generally, what we love about the State High School Association is that they're already regulating high school athletes, and they already have a sports medicine advisory committee. So they already have the experts who can advise them on what makes sense for health and safety, right? So you want that expertise and that insight. You don't want people with no medical background making those medical decisions and those policies. So that's why it's so natural to have the state association in that position. And usually it's every state is different. The process of getting those policies in place usually goes through a committee. It gets voted on, and eventually gets put into place. And that's usually, I'll say usually, an easier route than going through legislation, right? Legislation takes a lot longer, takes a lot more investment money. So it's a lot of smaller states might not have a lobbyist. So that's a lot harder when, again, you have a state athletic training president looking to try to put a bill through, right? So it's all depends on the state. And we try to work with what's at their disposal. Yeah.
That makes sense, and I can imagine gets very interesting from time to time.
Yeah.
Just kind of looking through it, we covered quite a bit in a short amount of time, but anything about TUFSS that we didn't cover, or in specifically, kind of California, that you wanted to touch on before we jump into the athletic training chat questions?
I think what I would say is, yes, we've been to 30 states so far. We are planning to visit the remaining ones. So if we haven't been to your state and you want to be involved, or if you want to start a meeting, if you're if you're in one of those leadership positions and we haven't been to your state, feel free to reach out to me, because we want to come, and we are going to be planning a meeting at some point. And so feel free to reach out if you want to get involved. I would say to the other athletic trainers, like I was just saying, if you like the sound of this work, don't be shy. These are one of the opportunities for you to be involved on your state level and to make a bigger impact if that interests you, right? So like I said, we go to those state leadership positions when we go to a state, and those are the people we lean on when we come into one. So I think we covered most of the other items related to TUFSS, but I'll just say this is an ongoing project. We've been at it for years now, since 2018, and we still have a little bit to go. And we are always trying to provide resources and tools to make it easier, to make it better. So what I always say to states after we leave is, keep in touch, keep us in the loop. And if we can provide something to make it easier, better, more efficient, then we want to give that to you. We want to make this process as easy as possible. So there's a lot of tools and resources, not only on our website, but on a lot of actually other websites from the states that have been able to accomplish this.
For sure.
Hopefully we make this much more of a manageable process, right? And decrease some of those barriers. So always reach out. We just want to make it easier. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I just want to echo something you said in terms of getting involved. I know sometimes there becomes some chatter of, how to, making change and not being able to get involved. I'm speaking solely for the state of Wisconsin, but I got to imagine it's like this in a lot of other states. If it's not a board position, which, just knowing us, like, we have a person apply, so it's kind of by default. There's opportunity there, but there's committees that are committees of one that aren't meant to be, governmental affairs, some of the PR stuff. There's probably an opportunity, and especially if you're listening in the state of Wisconsin, please let us know. But to get involved in one way or the other. So if this is something, and you really, again, just on looking at what we have for us, like, you can really get as much out of it as you want to put into it, because there is that need for people to volunteer. So If that is an interest to you, take advantage of it. Reach out to your board if they don't respond right away. I know sometimes those emails don't get checked as often as they should. Reach out again. It's well worth it because they definitely want you to be a part of it. And again, just speaking from firsthand experience. So
Mhm.
just I wanted to echo that out there.
That's great. Love it.
So with that, we can jump into the athletic training chat questions.
Mhm.
First one is, where do you see athletic training going in the next 5 to 10 years? And feel free to, if you want to talk about one specific setting or just a broader profession, I leave that up to you.
Yes. So it's a big one. And
Yes.
I love that you open with like the big question right now, and not like the small question in our profession, but it's certainly very hot topic, I would say, right now in terms
Yeah.
of our athletic training profession. There's a lot of chatter, there's a lot of ideas out there. And so, I think I, I think if anybody's in the social media world at all, I don't think this is a controversial statement, but I think that we're going through a transitional period right now. That's what I'm going to call it for our profession, right? Um, it's never going to be smooth. It's never going to be easy. But I do think that in general, we are trying to improve the position of the athletic training profession. And I think that's a worthy goal, right? Of trying to make it better. We're doing that in California with licensure right now. That's like something that hits closer to me when I'm talking about this sort of answer to this question here, right?
Hmm.
So my hope is that in the next 5 to 10 years we definitely have licensure in every state. So I think we're talking about California, but New York and also South Carolina right now have certifications right now, and they're not technically under a licensure. So if you're watching, you'll also see, I know that there's efforts for both of those states to go the licensure route as well. So my hope is that we would see licensure in all of the states in the next 5 to 10 years. I also hope, again, these are things that we're trying to specifically accomplish with the work that I'm focused on every day, is that we will see more athletic trainers reaching the high school levels in the next 5 to 10 years, right? So we know through the Atlas data set. And so I'm going to do a quick shout out to all those high school athletic trainers that fill out those surveys. If you haven't filled it out in the last 3 years, please go renew your survey, update it so we know what's going on. But we know through the Atlas survey that over 30% of the high schools don't have any access to an athletic trainer, right? That's a huge proportion of the 8 million athletes that we have. So my hope is that we see that number continue to drop, and that the access to athletic trainers continues to increase, right? And then obviously, my hope is that the work that we're doing through TUFSS, while it's directly through policies and health and safety initiatives that are meant to directly impact the athletes, I hope that that is also seen as a support structure for athletic trainers. And that as we get these policies in place, I'm hoping that what athletic trainers feel is less conversations and battles over what does or does not need to happen, right? Because we're going to put some of these best practice policies into place, and they're simply going to be standards at that point, right? So we don't need to debate whether or not we're going to do a heat acclimatization program in the preseason period. It'll just be in place, right?
Right.
So we have to follow it. So hopefully that is supporting all the athletic trainers out there in helping to enact those health and safety policies.
Awesome. What advice would you go and give yourself as a young athletic trainer? And if you could kind of set, what period of your career that would be in.
Yes. So this is a tough one because I kind of have a couple different lives as an athletic trainer, right?
Sure.
I had my early clinical years in the high school, and also my professional years more on the research side, right? In the grant and all the work that we do through the Korey Stringer Institute. But I think something that would potentially transcend all of those positions would be kind of don't be afraid to speak up and make those collaboration and connections to see where there are either people or resources to help you, right? I, you know, I feel like there's always somebody out there who's gone through what you're trying to achieve
Sure.
or something similar, right? Maybe
Yep.
not the exact same thing, but the thing I love about the athletic training profession is that we are a great group of people in general. And I think if you just ask, I think you'll find that there's a lot more support and or items that already exist out there that can help you through anything that you're trying to get through at that point.
I like it. What has been the most influential resource that you have found in your career?
Ooh, uh, I would say great mentors. Yep, colleagues and mentors. Yep. So I know that was a very short, quick
Oh,
answer, but
perfect.
I think that those are some of the most influential people on you and some of the most um, important people in terms of helping to guide you when you hit like a path and you're trying to make important decisions about which direction you might take.
Absolutely. Next one, as an AT in your role, how do you take care of yourself, especially with traveling around the country quite frequently?
So um, I agree that this is a really important question. I'm glad you ask it
I can't
because it is
remember who brought it up, but we started it about halfway through, and it's been a very fruitful one, if you will.
yes, yeah, I love it. So, yeah, to avoid all the negative things that happen when you don't take care of yourself, right? I think it's very clear if we don't take care of ourselves, we're not going to be taking care of our populations and our
Mhm.
patients, right? So, um, so yes, I do travel a lot. I inherently enjoy travel, but when I do travel, we always try to find joy in traveling and finding something new and appreciating the opportunity to be someplace that I haven't been before, right? So I inherently am grateful and appreciate that, and I always try um, to make sure that I never forget those things, right? And that I appreciate them. But of course, inherently, I'm also uh, interested in athletics and sports. I was a runner my whole life, and so I really appreciate being able to get outside, exercise, run. I've done 7 marathons in my lifetime to date, so I have a few more to check off. But yep.
Jeez.
So I do love and appreciate running, trail running especially, and just kind of being outside. So I think those are the things I love to do that really help revitalize and refresh me.
Awesome. If you could change or eliminate one thing, could be a modality, a common practice, a mindset, or whatever it is of your choosing in the field or profession of athletic training, what would it be?
Yep, this is a tough one, um, but it's good. I love the questions. So, and I did think about this, and I immediately went to mindset, but then I felt that my mindset that I was thinking of was really a wider culture mindset. And so I'll tell you 2 things, I guess.
Perfect.
One mindset was, and again, this is reflective of the work we're trying to achieve, is that um, one of the hardest things we run into is when we're talking about health and safety policies is the mindset that just because it hasn't happened doesn't mean that it's not going to or that the risk isn't present, right? I'm not saying, and I'm a little hesitant on this one only because I don't think that that's necessarily reflective of athletic trainers, right?
Sure. Sure.
That's kind of just what I'm up against in general in terms of trying to get these best practices in place, right?
It makes complete sense. Yeah.
So, so just in terms of what we work with on a day-to-day basis and what we can see, that is just a mindset that's sometimes really tough to overcome. And so I would definitely change that in a heartbeat because I think it would make everything so much easier.
For sure.
But um, but also, uh, if I could change one thing in the field of athletic training, I'm going to maybe work a little bit outside of the bounds of your question. Um, I think it would be having access to all of the resources and tools and equipment that we need to address catastrophic injury in sport. So it's not eliminating anything. It's actually introducing more things.
No,
Uh,
it could be
but I would,
changing the practice of not having all of
yes,
the necessary
there you go.
tools that you need.
There you go. So I'd want every athletic trainer to have a sufficient number of AEDs. I'd want every athletic trainer to have a cold water immersion tub and WBGT. So I'd want athletic trainers to be fully resourced when it comes to saving a life. Ultimately, that is what drives me every day, is making sure that every athlete makes it home at the end of the day.
Awesome. I think that's a perfect one, and I like the framing of that. Absolutely. Last question is, what does being an athletic trainer mean to you?
Mm. And this is a big one too. Maybe I misspoke earlier when I said it was the biggest one.
This is the big one. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I don't know that I'm going to have the perfect or eloquent answer to this because I didn't script it out. So
It's all
you'll have
right.
to excuse me on that one.
Not at all.
But I think being an athletic trainer to me means being an advocate for your patients and also for our profession. That's as simply as I can put it, right? We do so much for so many different populations, so many different people. And so I think the work we do is really impactful, really important. And so I think the best way we can do that, and what really defines us, is us advocating and doing that work for our athletes, but then also for our profession. Yeah.
I think that was well said and very concise, which is also hard to do with that big of a question. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Before we kind of just fully wrap up, anything else you wanted to share, or a call to action for anybody that might be listening?
Oh, another question I might not have fully been prepared for.
Sorry, I kind of
Uh,
through that one in at the end. That's my bad.
okay. No, I just, in general, what I will just say, as just the work that we do at the Korey Stringer Institute, especially to young athletic trainers out there who may be establishing themselves, or maybe establishing a new position at a new high school, hopefully, as we get
Hmm.
new athletic trainers into those positions. We are here as a resource. We're here to provide education, resources, tools, connection points. The great thing about traveling to 30 different states is having made connections in 30 different states, and
Sure.
identifying a lot of the leaders within those
Yeah.
states, and who's working on what and who's been through what, um, so I would just say, I hope that if you're not familiar with the Korey Stringer Institute, you go and you check out the things that we're working on, check out our website, see if there's a way that we can either facilitate or help you, or if you want to get involved. I think those would be the biggest things I would leave everyone with today.
Awesome. And then the final one, it's not too much of a gotcha. It's just if people wanted to connect with you, what would be the best way for them to do that or follow along? We'll link all the Korey Stringer Institute stuff up in there, absolutely. But talking to you more specifically, if there's a best way.
Sure. So clearly, I'm available through the Korey Stringer Institute website, right? ksi.uconn.edu. Twitter, of course, at Becca Stearns. Those are probably the best ways to reach me. Yep.
Awesome. Well, with that, thank you very much for taking the time and filling us in on Tufts, and then also everything that's going on with California. Just for everybody's context, now that you've listened to this whole thing, we recorded this in late February, so it'll be around everything that's happening in March. So just a little bit of context there if you're listening to it way down the line. But thank you again for being on and sharing everything that you're doing, and thank you for all the work that you are doing. And we'll look forward to seeing what happens with everything.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to this episode with Dr. Becca Stearns of Korey Stringer Institute. Obviously, she's out there trying to do whatever she can to help ensure the safety of all the athletes that are impacted in high school sports and beyond. It is really awe-inspiring to see what they're doing and the impact they're able to have, and really just in considerably short amount of time, even though it has been a while, but really, really impactful. As always, we want to thank Mueller for supporting us and the profession and partnering up with our Throw a Lifeline program. If you want to head over to clinicalpress.org, you can learn more about that. Donate, nominate, apply if you need some basic health care materials that for whatever reason you can't get a hold of through your current budgetary process or whatever the means are. As soon as we hit our goal of about $175 to fill the kit, Mueller donates the kit to the person to correspond with it all. So with that, thank you for listening. We'll hopefully see you at the next episode, and enjoy National Athletic Training Month.